Oh, I'll tell you, working on the Corvette Stingray program was one of the greatest things in my life. I had gone back to work at General Motors. I was 19 years old at that time. And at that time, when you were a young designer going into there, they put you as a lead designer into what they call a research design studio. They were taking young designers down there and just turning them loose and saying, whatever you guys can do, because it has nothing to do with what's going on upstairs at the production studios. In working in this studio, everything was sort of an advanced concept. The interesting thing was at that time, in 1957, Harley Earl had come up with the idea of building a prototype race car. And the car was very, very fast, but it did not have state-of-the-art brakes on it. So the only reason it wasn't successful was the brakes weren't very good. And management thought they were spending too much money on it, so they cut the total Corvette program off, completely ended the Corvette program. Harley Earl was just going to retire at that time. He'd been president of General Motors for like 20, 30 years, 25, 30 years. And his replacement was young Bill Mitchell, who'd been there for 27 years. And it was impossible almost for me to look at that because I'm going in there, I'm 19 years old. He's been there almost 10 years before I was born, but he's going to take over General Motors and he wants to put the Corvette program back on the top, totally against what top management said. So the only way to do that program was we're going to do it in secret, and he can't take it to the Corvette studio or the Chevrolet studio upstairs because top management would have discovered it. So they took it downstairs and put it in the advanced concept studio. So there's 3 or 4 of us down there, and he walks in. He'd been over the Turin show in 1957. He'd seen all these beautiful little streamliners that were being built in Italy at that time by Stanguolini and Fiat, and even one really trick one is being done by Alfa Romeo called the Disco Volante. And each one of these cars had a very, very crisp line all the way around the outside and aerodynamic shape over each tire. And he came back and he laid down a bunch of photographs. He said, this is what's going on in Europe. It's very successful with the pup. Let's use this as a theme and we'll work on that. So he turned that design project over to all of us in the studio and said, I want you guys to put up all your work on the idea and see what works. So obviously worked on it for 4 or 5 days, and he came back in and he walks around the studio and looks at everything. And he said, pulls the drawing down off the wall. Who did this? And I raised my hand, you know. He said, okay, now every one of you guys have to do something better than this one. I'm gonna come back in a week and see what you can do. So the same thing, we drew up all these things. Walks around the room again, picks a thing off the wall. Who did this? And I raised my hand. He says, okay, you're gonna lead this project, and we're going to work together and we're going to do a new Corvette. And we're looking at each other because we know the Corvette program has been killed by top management. And he says, don't worry about it. He said, all of these things are cyclical. We'll go through and we're going to build a great looking car. And when we show this, the public's going to like it so well, it'll go back into production. And he was dead right. So we did the car, and the first time he showed the car, I mean, it got so much publicity, it was incredible. The amazing thing is that halfway through this, management has discovered what he was doing, and they came to him, and of course now he's been there 27 years, he's so senior they can't really fire him. They said, if you want to finish this car, you cannot put the Chevrolet name on it, you cannot put the Corvette name on it, and if you want to finish it, you're going to have to put up your own money to do it. And he did. He put up all the bucks to finish that car, and we took it out on the track, and it just was a absolute sensation, and totally changed management's mind, and they put the car back into production. And the first year that they went out and sold 10,000 units, that was the first time they made money with it, and it became a commercial success. The Stingray name came from because Bill Mitchell was a real fan of deep sea fishing. And he'd go down to Florida all the time, and he loved looking at all of the sharks and the stingrays and everything, all those ideas. And he invented the name Stingray, put that on the car because he couldn't put the Chevrolet or Corvette name on it, put Stingray on it. And so it was developed because of his love of deep sea fishing and his admiration for the shape on the fishes that he caught.